Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Moon Knight. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I find it so fascinating because it feels like out of any of the Marvel Disney Plus shows we've gotten so far, I feel like this one is throwing you into the deep end the most. Because with WandaVision, you're already kind of in there being like, wait, what's going on? Why is this all happening? Loki kind of like, I feel like the episode, in retrospect, I guess like the episode's slower because it's throwing so much at you at building up the TVA and explaining what it is. And I feel like Falcon and Winter Soldier is pretty straightforward. Same thing for Hawkeye. But this kind of throws you in because, and I've watched the trailer maybe twice, but it's been a while. It's the original like official trailer, and any other promotion material I've avoided like crazy. So the only trailer I've seen of Moon Knight was like the official one that dropped a little while back, and it feels like 80 or so, maybe like more like 75% of what we saw in that trailer seems like it's all from the first episode, and that blew my mind because I thought they'd ease us into it. Like I said, they threw you in deep in because we get introduced to Steven and his life and just him kind of almost being this bumbling person, obviously having his sleep issues. We don't get slowly introduced to his circumstances. We're just thrown in and like, yep, he's got himself chained to his bed. He's got sand around his bed to make sure like he doesn't, so that like if he left his bed, he'd be like, okay, I can see. But I guess it never crossed Steven's mind to think that he doesn't realize he has a, it's not multiple personality disorder. That's not the name for it. It's dissociative personality disorder. He's got multiple personalities who are intelligent in their own right, and they want to keep Steven ignorant to what's going on. So they probably come back in, add the sand to cover back up the fact that they left in the first place, and reseal the tape. But I love that makes him almost go very mad because he thinks I'm going crazy. And I compared this when I watched the trailer to Legion. I'm definitely getting Legion vibes from this, like especially the whole element. And I love that about Legion of, yeah, you're the most powerful mutant out there, David. But then David asks the question, you guys say I'm not crazy, but what if you're wrong? What if I am crazy? So there's more going on here with Steven, but he's unaware. And I think that's such a fascinating thing. Why is it that Steven isn't aware of the other, at least the other personality? We know there's at least probably one or two. We know there's Mark, but there probably is more. Why is it? Because it seems like at one point during the mirror, when he was in the bathroom near the end of the episode, one of them was holding his arm and the other one wasn't. So it feels like that's at least two. And even when he was walking in the museum and walked past the glass, and the versions of him in the glass were still staring ahead. And then I think they turned and looked at each other. So there's at least two personalities at play here. But why is it that they're like self-aware, knowing that Steven exists? Because everyone, well, it's more so Khonshu calls him the idiot. But why is it that they're conscious of the others, but Steven isn't? That's what I find so interesting. At least it seems like it. So are the other personalities active to some extent, even when they're not in control? I'm curious, because immediately my brain starts going off, okay, so is this kind of like a Crazy Jane from Doom Patrol type of situation? Because once again, to anyone that doesn't know, this is my first deep dive into Moon Knight. I've heard people bring up Moon Knight before. It was only in recent situations where I found out about some of his circumstances, him being tied to a moon god and stuff like that. And the dissociative personality thing, which it seems like that's not always a thing in the comics. Maybe like in some of his earlier issues, but I guess it depends on who's doing the run. I guess some runs kind of pull away from that. Maybe not. I don't know. But the reason why I was saying like I'm wondering is about like Jane, because Jane has a, God, what's the word? I'm blanking on it now. The primary. There's a primary personality that kind of acts as the focal point, and like you kind of feel the everyday roles, and the other personalities kick in when they need to. They all have their own purpose. If you've seen Doom Patrol, you know what Jane's whole circumstances is. What her circumstances are. So I'm curious, is Steven the primary? Doesn't seem like he is, but for him to be the one the least out of the loop, that might also just because Khonshu and Mark are like, that idiot doesn't need to, well, Khonshu's like, right, the other versions of you are more necessary than this. I don't want to, like, Steven, you're worthless, so you're not worth bringing into the fold. So, because it seems like his situation has been predating all this for a while. Because it seems like, because we really don't know how long Steven's been having these sleep issues. But based on what Lila says when she called him on the phone, it's like, Mark, I've been trying to text and call you for months. So at bare minimum, this has been going on for months. God knows how long. So a lot of stuff like that has to be kept in mind. But like I said, we get introduced to Steven's regular life, and every once in a while, like, his reality is breaking a little bit with the other personalities. It seems like the main one that interacts with him is potentially Mark, being like, "Yo, Steven, stop looking." Because I guess the more he deep dives into stuff, the more of a trail he leads back to all of them. So it's like, you looking is putting us in danger. Stop asking questions you don't need to know. It's best you get left in the dark because you're completely and utterly useless. Otherwise, leave this to me. I got this. So, but going into really quickly, Donna is mean. She is so mean. At first, calling him useless, and, once again, calling him Stevie. He's like, no, it's Steven. Even JB can't even get his name right. He's like, see you later, Scotty. He's like, Scotty, it's Steven with a V. He's like, oh, really? It's like, even later on, hey, Scotty. It's like, it's Steven. I even love, he's like, oh, she's like, Donna was like, if you're trying to ask, could you be the tour guide? That's a no, and it never will be okay. And he's like, no, that's not what really? Well, that's actually really heartbreaking that you just, like, broke my dreams like that. Because he wants to be a tour guide, but he just kind of works at a stand selling stuff and restocking stuff. He doesn't have the job he wants to, even though he has this vast knowledge of Egyptian gods and culture and Egyptian history. But yeah, like, also when that lady comes over and it's like, oh, dinner, he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, and he was like, are you asking me out? She's like, oh, you're so funny. I'm like, like, that's so interesting that we get the first day of him realizing anything's wrong. He's noticed he had sleep issues and stuff, but it's interesting that, like I said, we don't start when all of a sudden it starts happening to him. No, once again, it's been happening for months. But then again, you also have to wonder, like, because I think Mark typically in the comic books is the main if we were to use the crazy if we were to use the Jane situation from Doom Patrol, he would be the Jane. I guess truth be told is he'd be more like the K, the OG. But he's kind of like the OG body potentially. So maybe after a couple months, he's always been Mark, and then eventually Steven got created. So that's going to be an interesting point to see which personality ended up being first and which one ended up getting created later. Or maybe that's going to be a point of, like, does it really matter? We're all here. Doesn't matter who came first. Or will that be a point to be like, no, I came first, so I have seniority over the body. But yeah, like, the moment that date situation was set up and Donna was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you were able to kind of make that work. And she's like, yeah, but you're going to a state place. Like, what is a vegetarian going? He's like, I don't know, salad and bread. And she's like, yeah, she really lucked out on you, and walks away. I'm like, Donna, you literally came back over here to talk shit and leave. That's super messed up. So regardless, then there's the whole situation of him getting back home, trying to go to sleep, but can't. And then, once again, everything happening in this first episode that I wasn't expecting until later in the series. That whole, him waking up. I love that his jaw's messed up and he had to kind of pop it back into place. You could, like, it seemed like he got hit in the face or something. He wakes up in the middle of a field. He's like, wait, where am I? Khonshu's talking like, oh, the idiot's in control. It's like, man, can't catch a break. You're getting it at work. You're getting it from the voice of an Egyptian god talking crap about how useless you are. It's like, can he catch a break? Then he's running for his life. He ends up he has no idea where he is, but he runs into Arthur and his whole thing. Which that character, just interesting stuff I've heard. I know, I've heard, I want to say it was, Heroes Reforged. I want to say it was Hector who might have said that this character was only in one comic over, like, the years of, like, Moon Knight stuff. Like, this is a character from, like, the 80s that Marvel can kind of do whatever Marvel Studios can do whatever they want to with the character, because the character doesn't have extensive enough history. I think that was kind of the thought process. So it's like a character no one knows nothing about. But it's the very thing you got from him in the trailer, and it's prominent in this too, is this very cult-like mentality he has over people. Also, that opening, that's crazy, but I guess that's like, right, trying to balance yourself out, trying to... I guess it's just like a steady mind type of thing, a mentality of like putting yourself in constant pain and trying to divert your mind from it. I don't know whether it is a thing of kind of like similarly to like walking over hot coal, like that whole practice of what that means and what that represents. I don't know if this is supposed to be similar, or is it supposed to signify some... like, is it supposed to be some metaphor for life, that the constant pain you'll constantly be in, but you still have to find and move forward regardless? I don't know. That's me reaching. But that's pretty crazy that he did that. Broke a piece of a glass, shot glass or whatever, put it in his shoes and just kept on walking. And also his tattoo, and they're kind of... what is significant from their organization is the scales. He's kind of the... I don't know if conduit would be the right word. Just the human vessel for Ahmad, and the scales is supposed to be his way of like, right, he judges your soul, and obviously it goes back to the thing of depending on... I'm not well versed in Egyptian mythology, the Egyptian mythos. I only know the tiniest grain and bits about it, but it's I know what the balancing of the scales is. Like, the scale, it has to be completely balanced to mean that you're good. I thought it was interesting that it's like, oh no, because the lady's like, no, I've led a good life. It's like, yeah, but maybe it's not about what you've done, it's about what you haven't done yet. I was like, wait, we minority reporting this? And it's like, yeah, Amat judges your past, present, and future to kind of decide. So that poor lady ended up, I guess her soul got devoured in the process, potentially, or just taken. But I do like that we never get to see fully what Mark does, because every time Mark takes over or whatever, it just cuts to him like kind of shifting, and then like all of a sudden, bam, I'm back as Steven. Whether it's, oh my god, all these guys are trying to take this scarab from me, and I think it's so interesting that I don't know whether that was a Mark thing or whether that was a Khonshu thing, but Khonshu was like, you will not give them that beetle, and so he's just like, right, he has to sit there and like pry open his hands and give it to him. So I'm wondering who was holding him back. Was it Mark? Was it Khonshu? Does Khonshu have that type of control over his body, or was that Mark taking control even though he's not in control of the body? Like, I'm curious. Once again, we'll have the rest of the series to really deep dive into it, but those are my questions immediately. Like, okay, so how does this whole thing work? But yeah, my point was, they're trying to take the scarab from him. He passes out, wakes up, everyone's like on the ground. He's got a bloody hand and the scarab. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm just going to leave. And so, running for its life, driving away in the van, it's slipping in and out of consciousness as it's like, wait, why do I have a gun suddenly in my head? What's going on? Wait, passes out, wakes up. Why am I driving backwards? It's like, I wasn't like I said, I thought they'd ease you into like, oh, he'd start realizing like, oh, I'm losing a little bit of time here and there. Because I thought those sequences were going to be in later episodes. It's like, no, let's throw it all in it in the first episode. That's wild. But I also love him waking up and being like, oh God, thank God it was a dream. It was all a dream. Thank God. I'm still tied in my bed. There's no sand disturbed. The tape is still on the door. Once again, it never, he never thought probably like, oh, because the entire time he believes he was just sleepwalking, as he kind of joked about it with his buddy, who is the guy who like gets paid to just stand there as like a statue. I love that that's his friend, and it's so interesting and speaks volumes that that's the person you talk to. Very much like, if you've seen Peacemaker, I wonder, will it be the same conclusion of like, why you have the particular friend and buddy that you talk to? Because it's like, yeah, this is someone that you can talk to who won't really communicate back to you, because it's like, right, this is my thing and I'm not going to break it for you. So he says, good talk. I'll see you next time, I love that. That's kind of, it seems like that's your only friend, because it doesn't seem like he's friendly with anyone else at work or anything like that. So he tried to go on his, well, he saw his fish was different. He's like, wait, Gus had one fin, now he has two. It's like, what are you talking about, dude? You came here yesterday about, wait, what do you mean yesterday? That was happening, no, that was just last night. I wasn't here yesterday. Wait, is that time right? And the moment he goes to look for his date, which I love, he's like, I look like such a knob. The moment he gets there, she's not there. I was like, you already missed it, huh? You were so wrapped up in things that you never bothered to check the date. I wonder, is that a thing of, okay, like, he was just so frazzled and everything that he just didn't really, he got so caught up and didn't realize the time. And it's like, at no point you didn't check your phone. But then part of me wonders, like, are they going to explain that away by being like, no, to keep him, like, thinking everything's okay, they don't let him know that literally it's been, like, 2 days. He's missed 2 days. So that maybe they kind of mess with his head a little bit and make it so, like, right, don't bother checking your phone, don't check the date. Like, kind of, like, can either Mark or Khonshu mess with him on that level to mess with his perception of time and make him just go, because I guess, like, you would have, but it's just like, at some point you'd look down on your phone and be like, oh, why does my phone say it's the wrong date? Who cares? Something must be glitched with my phone. You didn't even get a scene like that, so that's why I'm like, is it supposed to be perceived like, no, he's not even going to bother checking, you know? Because it's like, oh, like, of course it's the same day. Like, why wouldn't it be? I just woke up. It's like, oh, the clock's, wait, why am I just waking up now? Wait, I'm missing work. Wait, I'm missing my date. And yeah, so that didn't work out. It makes you wonder, like, is the mom he's talking to even real? Like, that's how deep I want to know, like, the mom you're talking to. Because it's a line I'd skipped over, but Arthur was like the mercenary. So I was like, so we are going with the Mark being a mercenary thing, but I guess when he showed up as Mark and when he wasn't Steven, he presented himself as a mercenary. Because even later on, Arthur was like, wow, you legitimately gave your name and told me that you worked at a museum. I thought that was an alias. Turns out it's super real. Then there was the whole Lydia, what was it, like Duchamp or something like that? Because all the other calls were to, everything else was from Lila, but there was one other name that just popped up like one time, but everything else was Lila. And so it's like, oh, I was wondering, like, is she also a fellow mercenary that they work together? Or is that like Mark's significant other? I'd assume it's got to be his significant other or someone he got close to, because she's like, right, I thought you were dead. Like, I've contacted you and you haven't gotten in touch with me in over like a couple months. So that doesn't seem like that's, because I was about to say, like, could she be a fellow mercenary? Not sure if he was alive, but if that was the case, like, why would she be trying to contact him that much? So don't know. A lot of questions. Obviously, there's the whole Khonshu encounter. We get multiple instances of getting just to see Khonshu just like walking around, which is a pretty dope design. Because I think that is kind of straight out of the comics, apparently, like that design and look. He was trying to go to the ground floor, and it's like, wait, am I really on the 5th floor? And that lady was like, yeah, this is my friend. She was looking for me. She's expecting me. I'm like, oh, that poor lady is so freaked out and scared. I love it. Well, not I love it, but that poor lady. Because it's like, yeah, Steven looks like such a crazy weirdo that it's like, I can understand why she'd be freaked out and terrified. And then Arthur showing up at the museum and trying to use the scales of Emmett on him, but it doesn't work. All he can do is like, he's like, there's so much chaos in you, so that I guess like the scales can't properly, well, do their judgment on him because there's just too much off. Like, I guess like there's too much to equate inside of him, because I guess, well, maybe because he's touched by a god, but also he potentially has multiple personalities. So how do you judge the soul of someone who's multiple people at once? So maybe that's kind of a loophole and technicality around it. Then gets chased by a dog-like creature. Mark is like, yo, let me take control. You're not going to die. He takes control, full-blown Moon Knights it up, and we get our little sequence from the trailer where he proceeds to beat the ever-living crap out of the dog. I'm like, it doesn't seem like you killed it. It looked like you just knocked it out. He just, like, punched it and punched it and punched it. I even love that it was trying to get away at one point in time. He dragged it back into the bathroom. So I'm so curious to see how I'm guessing going forward we're going to get less and less of it, because I think just to keep you on your toes, to kind of keep this mystery element going, they're going to be like making him constantly pass out, and he's going to wake up being like, wait, what? But I think probably as the season progresses, you'll get less of that, and either we're going to start following maybe like certain because I'm assuming everything going forward is going to be constantly through Steven's purview. And then maybe eventually we'll get to look at things from Mark's perspective. Mark, or when he's Moon Knight perspective. Or, I don't know. I'm so curious to see how they handle that going forward. Will they give you, like, how they'll handle that? Like I said, will it just all be from Mark's perspective and eventually we'll get... all from Steven's perspective and eventually get Mark's perspective, or is it just going to be a thing of the only conversations you'll really have with Mark is whenever him and Steven are talking through like some reflection or something, and then Khonshu talking to him. But once again, it's the weirdest origin story because we're starting in the middle. It's like Batman. It's like the Batman. It's like, 2 years into this story. It's not an origin story, but it kind of is an origin story to some regard. So it's like, yeah, we're just like jumping in the deep end here. It's not like, let me introduce you to this. Like, nope. When did I get in contact with Khonshu? Maybe a couple months ago. When did this whole Mark and Steven thing happen? Maybe a couple months ago. That's all it really is. It's maybes, and that's all we can surmise just from the first episode alone. But I'm very excited. Like I said, I know nothing about this character, and I'm excited to deep dive and get to understand the circumstances and just see how crazy and wild this show gets. Because I think it can... Will it be Legion levels of weird? No, because like Legion is a slow burn weird show. I don't see this necessarily being that. It'll have weird and crazy elements to it, but I don't think it'll be nearly as weird as Legion. But we'll see. Like I said, I'm excited to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with everything. Really quickly, I think it's kind of a fascinating thing. I wonder if this show going to have like the least like winks and nods to like the MCU. Just because Emma can't judge people like... What was it Arthur was saying? Essentially, like, if she was actually here, like, in her truest form or whatever, she'd be able to judge. She would have been able to prevent, like, a lot of terrible things like Hitler and stuff, because she would have been able to judge everyone. And it's, once again, cutting evil off from the past. It's like, right, you don't want to just deal with the weed and, like, after it's already caused its devastation, right? You want to cut it off before it becomes an issue. So the reason why I bring that up is, like, at no point did he go, yeah, and Thanos. That could be the easiest thing in the MCU to be like, oh yeah, like, could have prevented Thanos from happening. But it's like real world stuff of like, right, using Hitler, for example. So that's why I get the feeling like that could have been an easy opportunity to throw Thanos out there. The person who wiped out half the universe. Like, as a god, you would think that would kind of, be an example that one of your, people would have said, which I skipped over it, but I love that whole like back and forth about Avatar. He's like, oh yeah, the blue people. He's like, no. Oh yeah, talking about the anime? And he's like, Steven, stop it. We'll see. I'm curious to see will there be much of a, because the conversation has also been like, will there be any MCU references in regards of like the universe in as a whole, or will any characters make any potential cameos, stuff like that. And once again, that's icing on the cake. First and foremost, I'm just want to be able to enjoying the show as it is enough for me. If the extra like MCU stuff from the outside kind of bleeds in, that's cool. But I think that's just extra. It doesn't need to be like the main focus, obviously. So once again, excited to see what happens next. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.